Recently, I did the 10 ugliest musicians in rock. And I had a bunch of ugly musicians. Shane MacGowan from the Pogues came out number one. And for the sake of balance, I thought I should do the 10 best looking musicians in rock. Now, I didn't want to then start picking all my favorite, female artists and, getting all a little bit sort of, thigh rubbing, that type of thing as a middle-aged man. Go, oh, I do love Kate Bush, especially in that Babushka video. Oh, that was bloody lovely, that was. Yes, yes. I don't want to be doing all that. No, I'm not that type of a chap. So I have stuck to men. Now, of course, I am, and this is the first time I've ever said this on the channel, but I suppose it does need to be said at this point. I am a heterosexual man and I'm married, and I have no tendencies towards the other way of doing things, and I have nothing against those types. I have nothing against them. I think they're a good bunch of lads, I think, really. And so, more power to their elbow, as they say. So, there's no prejudice here. But I am going to have to appeal to that side of my nature. In keeping it to men, I'm going to have to go into that part of me that I believe every heterosexual man has and keeps quiet about, which is the ability to appreciate the beauty of the male, right? The beauty of the male. I will be doing that on this video. This video will probably be very short. I don't even know what I'm going to say. I'm not going to try and traverse saying what the attributes of various attractive ladies in the music industry is. But also, it's going to be quite strange for me talking about the visual aspects of certain gentlemen in the rock and roll trade. And so, in doing this, I will be exploring an area that I don't think I have before. And I hope, we should in this modern world, shouldn't we? We should. In the same way that a man can appreciate another beautiful man, I believe that heterosexual men should also be able to appreciate women for their beauty, but in a non-sexual way, in a way where it's much more about the appreciation of beauty, like you would appreciate a lovely landscape or, say, a nice painting of a bowl of fruit or something like that. So what we have here is basically 10 lovely bowls of fruit, male lovely bowls of fruit. Now, I don't want to get into all the hairy parts and muscular bits and all that bit of the men. I'm not going to be talking about that either. I'm just going to be talking about them from an aesthetic point of view. And are you ready for this? And if this does come across as homoerotic, well, at least that's a first for this channel, because I don't think I've ever got into this before, have I? So we need to do this, I think. The viewership for this channel is predominantly male and middle-aged. So there is something about this which is really odd. I'm a 57-year-old man talking to another bunch of old men about pretty men. And I am trying to hold back a giggle, which is I mean these videos, they are there to entertain you, make you laugh a little bit, and I normally am able to deliver a video like this with a very straight face and then lots of serious eyebrows, which sort of paper over the comic aspects. But with this one, I am finding it funny myself before I even start. The fact that I got this task ahead of me and I'm milking it so much at this point, which I always like to do. I always do that because on a video, the fair weather viewers, they never like me. They turn up and they go, why is this bloke not getting to the point? Somebody the other day said, how about the top 10 ways of getting to the point on a YouTube video? And he thought he cracked a great joke. And then all the viewers came in saying, I don't think you understand what this bloke's about, Andy Edwards, right? He likes to talk. He takes his time. He takes a YouTube video like a lush meal, a 5-course meal. And he savors every single syllable as though it's a tasty morsel of quality food, not some fast food bloody McDonald's offering that you get from other YouTubers, right? And so I like to take my time. I like to open it up. I like to woo you in a way. I like to woo you with my English spiel, my slow enticement for you to let go of your prejudices, likes, and open yourself up to something new. Maybe a new album, maybe some music that you've never heard before. Or in this case, open your side up, to open you up to that side of you where you will start to go, oh, I don't think they should have been at number 9. They should have been higher, at least number 7. And then go, oh, now what am I judging this by? Because I'm sure you lot that normally come in and go, oh, that's not right. Or put it in your own people. That's the other thing you'll do. I'll come up with my top 10 and then you'll go, hey, yeah, here's some other ones that are that. The greatest bass players of all time. So I put the 10 greatest bass players up. And then people come and go, yeah, Geddy Lee. And I go, yeah, he's a bass player. Yeah, but he's not in your top 10, is he? No. Why not? Because I didn't think he was in the 10 greatest bass players. Although I think he's a great bass player, I think he's not in the top 10. Well, I do. Good for you. Well done, mate. And so I would like to see who puts, an offering in here. Now, of course, and this is the case, that of the gentlemen in the audience that I'm talking to now, many of you could well be, have a tendency towards the Greek, shall we say? And then that's wonderful. I'm glad I've got a following amongst the middle-aged, the middle-aged gay community. And I'm sure, and they haven't said it, that watching me here with my little open shirt, that I have created amongst a certain section of this, a fan base which is appreciating me for more than my music knowledge, let us say. And I welcome that. I have no problem with that. I am not a homophobe. Not at all. Not a homophobe. So, shall we get straight in? Are you all ready for this now? Are those of you who would feel very uncomfortable doing this now feeling extremely uncomfortable as I lean into the camera and sort of seduce you into, with my big eyebrows going up and down? You see, they're not doing that on this and they're doing up all this, isn't it? Oh, I'm enjoying this, I do enjoy a bit of the old camp. I have to be honest. I think it's one of the, I'm not joking here, it's one of the great creative gifts to art is the camp.
He said, have you seen my snorkel? I said, not for a long time.
Right, shall we start off? So, let's start off with drummers, because I've only got one drummer on here, I do believe. So who's the most best looking drummer in the world? Who's the most handsome one of the drummers? See, they do tend to be quite ugly, me accepted, of course, I used to do clinics with the great Thomas Lang, and he's quite a handsome man in a Teutonic way. I can remember, was it John Farris, the drummer with In Excess? He was quite a handsome drummer. But without a doubt, the most handsome drummer that's ever existed in the history of drumming is, of course, the man I've got at number 10, which is the incredible Steve Jansen from Japan. And not only was he a very handsome man, he was also had a tendency to wearing a lot of makeup, wasn't he? He was a little bit of a girly boy in that era of the sort of new romantic types. Now, David Sylvian was known for pioneering a look that was then taken up later on by Lady Di. Well, you know that type of look. And George Michael, they all have their roots in Sylvian's look. And I always thought that Sylvian was a handsome man, but a bit bouffanty. Steve Jansen wasn't like that. Suit, tie, and just great film star looks. Handsome, a handsome man. And he's kicked off this, I think, great. Yeah, absolutely brilliant.
No, I mean, he's marvellous for the church. The things he does for the church, he really is wonderful, Jack. He really is marvellous. I mean, he does all the collects jumble and all that, And Bob a Job Week, I mean, the things he does, for 10 pence, nobody else would do.
So, that's who we've got at number 10. I don't know how much I'm going to be able to say about each of these characters. This is why I padded out at the beginning, so it wouldn't be like 7 minutes long. I can't have it. I know everyone else would do it, but I can't. I'm going to have at least 30 minutes there at least. 20 bottom. So I didn't mean to use, I said, don't use that word in this video, whatever you do. Don't use it. Because as soon as you say it, you know what you're going to think, and they're going to look into your eyes and go, you just said bottom on a video about attractive men. There's a theory that all men, when they get to their teenage years, are a little bit confused and they don't know which way to go. You know, that's what they say. And often a teenage boy will then get a fixation on an older boy. And part of that will be because of their looks. And this aspect, this sort of pubescent homosexual tendency that exists, has been taken up by heavy metal. So heavy metal has always had a tendency to side up good-looking lads, stick them in a haircut that looks like somebody out of Charlie's Angels, and stick some makeup on their face. Now, rock music has always gone from the surly and burly, the sort of Ozzy Osbournes, you know, the real men with the big black moustaches. But then when it gets old, it then moves towards the sort of makeup types that you get, like with Kiss and Paul Stanley. Now, Paul Stanley is, of course, very, isn't he? And then when that gets too much, it drops back. And in the 80s, we saw a real move towards the sort of hair metal, which I think really was mining a very interesting area of latent homosexuality until the grunge guys came along. More of them later. Now, I can talk about this in a very academic way, but when I was in my mid-teens, I've thought, well, is there anybody I became obsessed with? Not just obsessed with them in terms of, you know, them as a musician. Did I have my own little latent homosexual episode going on? And I think I may have. And, you know, the man that was the sort of, you know, he became the sort of focus of my interest in this area. It was the great Steve Vai. When I heard Steve Vai around about the age of 14, 15, I'd say it would have been around 83, 84, perhaps, when he brought out Flexible. I didn't know what he looked like, but I knew his guitar playing was incredible, right? And so I remembered the name. And then suddenly he emerged, first in Alcatraz and then in the David Lee Roth band. And David Lee Roth brought out Eat 'Em and Smile. And I was very impressed, you know, with his guitar playing on that. And also his looks, because Steve Vai had a bit of the old Jesus Christ about him, didn't he? Now, the Jesus Christ look goes throughout the whole history of rock music, right? If you're going to pick a man to sort of adhere to, Jesus Christ is a great one. The long hair and the beard. Now, I would say that this starts culturally with the great composer Eden Arbez, the proto-beatnik that lived in the Hollywood side in the 1940s, that wrote the tune Nature Boy. And he used to walk around, before the hippies were even a blink in their parents' eyes, he would walk around America, in California, sporting long hair, a beard and white flowing robes, looking like, you know, a 1940s Jesus Christ. And I think for a while, Steve Vai seemed to get into this Christ-like aesthetic. He had the long, shiny black hair, and he would put the little curls in at the end. You know, he'd got the cheekbones, the great big hands, massive hands, you know. There, I represent them there. Massive hands like that, right? This is actually, if you look at the sign language, that there is sign language for Steve Vai. And I was very impressed by him. And any magazine that I got, I was always by the magazine. And I then started to get posters of the man himself, posters. Now, I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to go off and actually grab a Steve Vai album now, if I can. Right, so here's my copy. I've got 3 copies of this album because I love it so much. Passion and Warfare. And look at Steve on the front of this. You know, he's got the pyramid representing the law of 3 with the all-seeing eye. He is holding an angel and a fiery hell in this hand. It's all very esoteric. You know, when I get all philosophical and start talking about the great dialectics and the law of 3, I didn't get it off Jeff or anything. I'm just being pretentious. I got it off Steve Vai. That's where I got it from. Now, if we get this album, this opens up into a little poster. Now, Frank Gambale never did this. You know, he never had the urge to make a CD that would open up into a Gambale poster. And if he did, nobody would want it on their wall. But who wouldn't want that on their wall? Look at the man. Look at Steve Vai. Look at that. When this album came out in 1990, I was 22. I wanted to look like that. Like Steve Vai there. I rest my case. I mean, he's got old now, hasn't he? He's too thin. It's the trouble when you get old. You got a choice. Be really fit and stay really thin. And you end up looking thin, but you end up looking a little bit like Gollum, don't you? Or you can put a little bit of weight on and you'll look younger, like William Shatner, that doesn't look anywhere near 100 years old, but does look like he's going to have a heart attack at any moment. I've tried to traverse somewhere between the two, you know, a B57 of just having enough porkiness to waylay that sort of Gollum look, and that's what Steve Vai looks a little bit like now, you know. He hasn't worn well, has he?
But, I mean, actually, he's marvellous. I've got the worms. He's marvellous. Stage hands, their hands are everywhere. Do you know?
But he's worn a lot better than the guy that I've got at number 8, which is Kurt Cobain. Now, this never gets mentioned, but Kurt Cobain, I think, is a very handsome man. When the grunge thing came out, they were taking over from all these pretty boys that had been in bands like Poison and Bon Jovi and all these types of bands. And they were coming in, taking over from there. But actually, they got some quite handsome people in that genre. And one of them is actually at number 3. One of the most handsome men that's ever existed, I think. And Kurt Cobain was a very handsome man. He you could almost see him as the Robert Redford of grunge, couldn't you? Really? Don't you think? What do you think, Kurt Cobain? I don't know what more I can say about it. Maybe that's why he went downhill a little bit. I think there he was, a great songwriter. He made an album that sold like 30 million copies, and he looked like a film star. And it didn't matter how many baggy jumpers with holes in he wore. He couldn't get away from the fact that he looked like a Hollywood film star. You know, he looked like he should be making a film with Barbara Streisand, where they go out and sort of flirt with each other and then eventually get it together and have lots of laughs. If he'd have gone and done that, once he'd done that third album with Nirvana, he should have gone, sod this now, I'm out of this, and gone and got his film deal. He goes, I'll leave the rock to Dave Grohl. It'll be safe in his hands. Leave it to Dave. He can carry on, and I'll get into making some films. And I think he should have made some films, comedy films. You know, and I think he would have been very good in that respect. And that's where he went wrong. Now, if he had stayed around, then once he was a film star and he made all these great films, you know, these comedy films, you know, pairing him with various actresses of the day. Jennifer Aniston, I think, would be good, you know. He could have played a rock star who wants to settle down, but can't settle down because he's always away on tour. And then he meets this girl and she's not a fan. She doesn't even know who he is. And he's a bit put off, you see. He's like, oh, I thought you would know who I am. Or I don't know who you are because I'm just a normal working girl to just do my own thing. And then much comedy stuff would ensue like that, as she doesn't really respect him for being the rock. But they do learn to love each other. And in the end, he gives up on the rock, which would be a sort of metaphorical climax to the film, mirroring what Kurt Cobain had done there, right? You could almost have a parallel reality where he commits suicide. If she's psychic, I've nearly got this down there. She's psychic and she thinks someone should make this film. Even though he's dead, they should make it. And in the future, when he gets old, he sends his son back in time to kill Dave Grohl so that the Foo Fighters never happen. A little bit like Terminator. So it'll be a little bit of Star is Born, a little bit of, you know, What Women Want, and a little bit of Terminator all mixed together. Have I managed to pad out this little talk on Kurt Cobain with enough rubbish to entertain you for 5 minutes. Let's move on to the next one.
My hair wants washing. But, you know, the other day, I wasn't very well, you know, because, you know, I mean, actually, you know, being a funny age, I go all limp, you know, I do, you know, like that.
Who is the one I've got number 7? And it is the aforementioned John Bon Jovi. I can remember as a kid when this band came out, I went to see a gig in my local town. A mate of mine was playing. And when I got there, they got a little video screen in this pub. And they were playing Bon Jovi. And I looked at this sort of poodle-headed band doing what I'd heard a million times before, you know, with John Bon Jovi smiling around with his really handsome face going around like that. And everyone was going nuts. All the girls in this pub were going nuts over John Bon Jovi. A lot of these people I've got here are pretty boy Jesus Christ types. Of course, women don't like that type. They like a bit of rough, don't they? They like a bit of chiseled roughness, don't they? And I think John Bon Jovi had a more of that sort of working class type of look, but very pretty at the same time. Anyway, it doesn't matter about what I think. These women were getting really excited by John Bon Jovi. And a few weeks later, I can remember going out to the pub, and at this point, these girls that were frequented, they weren't like rock fans. They got into like Steve Vai as well. And I can remember MTV was on this pub and Steve Vai came on. They went, oh, let's do Steve Vai. And they all getting gushy over him. But one of them was wearing like a denim jacket that she'd embroidered on a little John Bon Jovi tribute on the back of it. And on that, it was written, Slippy When Wet, which of course she got wrong because the album's called Slippery When Wet, not Slippy. And I feel that Slippy When Wet just seems to take away all the sort of rock and roll sort of bravado that's in Slippery When Wet. That's a proper 80s rock album title, isn't it? Slippy When Wet. Nah, terrible.
And I thought, now what shall I do? I think I'll make a few fairy cakes. Who knows, a lorry driver may come in when I was there. I got ever so giddy. And
so that's John Bon Jovi done. Okay, next up is I've got my old my old boss, Robert Plant, the Golden God. Now, like I've said, you know, blonde men aren't. It's rarer to get a handsome blonde man, I think, aesthetically. And I think that's down to the eyelashes. Blonde eyelashes never work, do they? They never really work, do they? So when Robert Plant emerges, he not only sets a new standard for sort of, you know, handsome, sexually out there frontman. He also is a blonde man, and he seems to nail that. I don't think anyone else has ever nailed it since. All the great rock stars that come in after Robert Plant don't have the blonde hair, do they? Now, he's a handsome bloke, but I have to be honest, you can tell there was something about the 70s where the sort of aesthetic aspects of looks, nobody cared about them like they do now. And so if I put The Song Remains the Same on and showed them my daughters to go, what do you think of Robert Plant when he was young? They're not as impressed, and there's two reasons. One is because he's got that gap in his, every time he smiles, he's got a great big gap in his teeth, which makes him look like, you know, a little bit like Albert Steptoe. And also his big mane of blonde hair, he'd obviously washed for Song Remains the Same. And then back there, just come out, no hair products have been put on it. And so these two side bits here got very, very frizzy. When they reshot it 3 years later on a soundstage, the hairdresser was able to really, you know, dampen down Robert's blonde mane and make it look very pretty and curly. But on the actual live footage, it looks terrible. And this then acts as a balance towards the wigs that they put on John Paul Jones and John Bonham that looks pretty, especially John Paul Jones's wig. What the hell's going on there? So Roberts, yeah, I think he was obviously very handsome at the time. And the ladies liked him. He is a handsome man. He's still a handsome man to this day, even though he's like very old. He's still a handsome man. He's still a handsome man. He's a very handsome man. I've been around him many a time, and he is a handsome man. I don't know how many times I've got to say this. He is a handsome man. He is a handsome man. Robert is a handsome man. I can't get out of this. I'm trapped inside it. I can't move forward because I'm now trapped in saying Robert Plant's a handsome man. Why did the ladies like him? I think it's got something to do with the trousers more than anything else. Robert Plant was able to wear a pair of trousers in a way that no one has really done before or since. The only other guy that I know was able to explore the trouser wearing as a front man was Bon Scott. Now, Bon Scott wasn't the best looking bloke in the world, but in the trouser department, he was definitely up there with Robert. I don't want to use the word up there, do I? Anyway, those trousers are quite incredible. And he had, I don't know what he's got embroidered on there. When you watch Song of Man, is it a little bird or a flower that's embroidered onto the trousers? I never like to look too closely, but I bet you a lot of the ladies in the front row were looking at that little thing, weren't they? Little thing, that is not the best description, is it?
I said, what do you want it for? He said, I'm trying to raise something for the vicar. So I said, well...
This bloke gets on my nerves. I've done a video on about how much I hate this bloke, even though I like his music, and his music's rubbish, but I still like it. It is, of course, the incredibly handsome Lenny Kravitz. Kravitz, as I like to call him. Don't like the Lenny bit. You know, I don't think Lenny goes with who. You know, Lenny doesn't sound right. Let's just call him Kravitz, because we know what we mean when I say Kravitz. You know exactly who we're talking about. Now, Kravitz is really handsome. Now, there was a whole bunch of handsome blokes when he emerged in the 1980s, wasn't there? You know, and he came out doing all that thing on, you know, Are You Gonna Go My Way and all that bit, with his sort of dreadlock guitar playing, you know, Hendrix without the actual reality and chutzpah that Hendrix had. But he was definitely somewhere between Hendrix and, you know, a Calvin Klein model, wasn't he, old Kravitz? I bet he's advertised some aftershave in his time, hasn't he? The thing that annoys me about Kravitz, and it's the same with the bloke that you got coming up, is Kravitz now is getting on for 60 years old. And his last video came out the other day, and there he was, still looking handsome, and writhing around in a bath at some point, being all sexual. And I thought, Kravitz, you might look like you should writhe around, but I don't think a man of his age should be allowed to writhe around like that in such a way. I don't think it should be allowed. I think a law should be passed against that type of thing. He's a very beautiful man, old Kravitz is, but when they, I don't know how they do this. It must be being millionaires, you know. You must be able to join some club where they keep you looking. Oh, I got a bit of wind here. Oh, I'm fed up with this list now. Have I really got to keep going? No, can I just move on from Kravitz and get on to the next one? The next one is a similar guy. He's getting on for 60. I think he is 60 now. He's probably in his early 60s. Nuno Betancourt. Nuno Betancourt. I can remember Steve Vai came out, and all the girls that didn't normally like the music that I like, they all suddenly liked Steve Vai. And then I can remember when I was at college going around to this girl's house, some students I knew, and they got a wall that was their handsome men wall. They had basically pulled together a whole bunch of different pictures and stuck it all over there. Well, there's a whole bunch of people on this. Matt Dillon was there, Steve McQueen was there. It was all these different men they did. It was very, and they were art students, so they'd be very creative. But right in the middle was an actual poster of Nuno Betancourt. And I went, that's Nuno Betancourt. They went, yeah, they're playing at the local venue and with Extreme. We've all bought tickets. I couldn't believe what was going on. And then Nuno, knowing that he'd got this sort of following, does more than words, which is just so... I mean, there he was, incredible guitar player, knew how to rock, but then he does more than words. And more than words is just designed to make girls like you. And I mean, that's the way it is. He's carried on in that vein all the way up until now. Now, recently, they brought that album out, and I bought it. I'm a sucker for this stuff. I'm a sucker for Nuno Betancourt and his incredible guitar playing. And there he was, 60 years old, hasn't got his hair cut, still got the cheekbones, still got the pouty mouth, still got all the rock star poses, and he looks amazing. My mate, who's a brilliant guitarist, a guy called Lee Evans, I'm going to have to get him on the channel, a brilliant guitarist. He went to see Extreme the other day, and I said, what was it like? And he said, oh, Nuno was amazing guitarist. He said, oh, what a cool dude. That's what men say. That's what men say when they get that slight pang of attraction that they don't, that confuses them. They say, well, he's a cool dude. Yeah, he bloody is Nuno Betancourt. He's a cool dude, isn't he?
She had this trouser suit on, too tight for her. Looks like she's been lagged for the winter.
Of all the rock guys, all the rock metal long-haired guys, all those pretty boys in all those glam rock bands, glam metal bands in the 1980s, the hair metal bands, all of them have never surpassed this guy. This guy is the greatest rock singer of all time and one of the most beautiful men of all time. My wife loves this bloke. And when you go into my house, we've got pictures of him on the wall. I have to live looking at this bloke all the time, and I don't mind it. I'll get up in the morning, you know, going to have a shower, you know, come out of the shower just with a towel around me and look up, and there's this man staring down at me. It's a very strange thing, and I'm trying to explore that area on this video. I hope you appreciate that in these modern times, that I am trying my best here to explore this. Anyway, the man is, of course, Chris Cadell, the greatest. Now, he understands where he's coming from. Look at Jesus Christ Post. That's the first time I ever heard Soundgarden. Bad Motorfinger comes out. They played that on the radio. What the hell's this? Incredible. This is proper rock, proper metal. Forget bloody Soundgarden. Forget Pearl Jam. Forget the rest of them. Start Nirvana. But don't forget Soundgarden. They were the best of the lot, weren't they, old Soundgarden? Jesus Christ, bro's incredible. Starts off just drums, blah, 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 just these sounds, all these things going on. You watch the video, it's all these flashings going on. What the hell? Where are we? Where are we? And then the riff kicks in, and the riff's bizarre. Kim Thayil, like this. And then it comes into this other riff that's even heavier. And then this bloke turns up looking like Jesus. He's got no shirt on. I'll have put a picture up from the video. If I ain't going to play it because I'll get demonetized. I don't need to. You all know how it goes. And he comes in with this note. Jesus Christ. I was thinking, how can you start the song up there? And there he is looking magnificent. Looking like the greatest man that's ever lived, you know. It's like when I got married, someone said, who's you going to have as your best man? I said, nobody. He said, why? Because the best man's Chris Cornell, isn't it? Oh, and he didn't love himself. I don't know why. It was such a shame. A few years ago, my wife, who's a massive Chris Cornell fan, Soundgarden reformed, and she messaged, we were doing this charity thing, and she messaged Matt Cameron on Facebook. This is so big. I can't believe this happened. She goes on Facebook, finds Matt Cameron and messages him and say, can I come to the gig? Do you want to sign this charity thing that we're doing? And Matt Cameron goes, yeah, come down to the gig. We'll get you in. So I come home from work. She says, we're going to see Soundgarden in London. You know, I'm on the guest list. I said, no, you're not. She says, I've asked Matt Cameron. I said, do you know Matt Cameron? She says, no, but I've asked him on Facebook. I said, that's not Matt Cameron. She said, well, it is. He said to go drive down. I said, all right, then we'll drive down. But I want you to keep ringing up and ring up that manager that when you get through, I want it confirmed. And I thought I'd start driving to London. Then she was ringing this number. It wasn't that. So I said, look, this is just a load. This is a big hoax. Then eventually we get through. And it is the manager of Soundgarden. We turn up, we go there, walk in. You know, Kim Thayil's outside having a fag, you know. I didn't know who he was. You know, I just thought he was a hobo with a beard. But my wife goes, that's Kim Thayil, that is. I said, is it really? And then we met Matt Cameron and we were in the inner sanctum. And Chris Cornell, he was just up the stairs and he didn't come down. And I didn't want to ask, or my wife, could we meet Chris? Because it sounds a bit presumptuous, so we didn't. And me and my wife have always regretted that. But later on when we watched the gig and we were up the front, he was singing and a bit of spit came out of his mouth and landed on my wife, which she seemed quite happy with. So that's who I've got at number 3 is Chris Cornell.
So I said, well, I said, you're all flushed in the face. What's wrong? He said, well, I've just come from my lesson. I said, you're never going back to your ballet class, because he does all ballet, you know, Jack. You know, but he let it go. He said, he did. I mean, his sugar plum fairy was marvellous.
Right. At number 2, I have Jim Morrison. Now, Jim Morrison's not the best looking of the lot here at all. Not at all. He's got a bit of a sort of, he's got one of them faces like Ollie Murs, where he's got a face and then the actual bits on your face, this bit here, they're all a bit too closely, you know. I mean, I haven't criticised anybody else on here. They're all very beautiful men. You can see I've put him at number 2, But actually, aesthetically, he's got a head too big for his face, hasn't he? Like Ollie Murs. And so that Jim Morrison, but he has got the look, hasn't he? He has the Jesus Christ look. He's the guy, I think, in terms of rock music that pervades it. You know, the what was he called? The flying lizard? It wasn't the flying lizard. The lounge lizard. What sort of lizard was he? He was a type of lizard, wasn't he? What was his name? What sort of lizard was he? I've forgotten. I started that off as a joke, and now I've done it. I can't actually remember what sort of lizard he was. But he was a type of lizard. He was very reptilian, wasn't he, with his black leather trousers and his baggy white top. The de rigueur approach, you know, everyone from Ian Astbury to the aforementioned Steve Vai, they've all done it, haven't they? Leather trousers, white flowy top, you know, looking like a little bit like, you know, someone out of a Star Wars, but that type of look. But not a stormtrooper, obviously. Jim Morrison. Now, recently, I have been watching interviews with Jim Morrison and getting into his life and sort of, you know, finding a little bit more about him. And all I could say is that he seemed to be a bit of a knob, really. He seemed to be a bit of a knob. That's all I can say. Full of himself, annoying, irritating, trying to, you know, be with the girls, shock everybody, do all this stuff. He was a bit of an idiot, wasn't he? And of course, being an idiot, later on, he then had to get a bit fat and grow a beard and then die as a heart attack in his bath, thus turning him into a living legend, really, along with Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix and Brian Jones. And that bloke from the Grateful Dead, what is his name? Pigpen. Yeah, he didn't get in that club, did he, really? 27 Club as well, wasn't he, old Jim Morrison? He's in that one with Janis and Jimmy. They're all in the same 27 Club. Janis and Jimmy are proper legends. I don't know about Jim Morrison. I know I put him at number 2 because you know what I'm like. Influence is always very important to me, so I put him at number 2. But he's not number 1, is he? Who have I got number 1? That man. That is a handsome man. Don't you think? Stay here. Stay there. Don't go. I'm getting a picture off my wall. I'll be back soon. I'll get 2 pictures off my wall, actually. I got 2 people. Right, just put it in from there as well. We'll end with this. The great dialectic. Every video of mine is all about balance. It's all about balance, right? So if you've looked into the background of my videos, there's all sorts of esoteric ephemera, isn't there? And the eagle-eyed of you will have noticed I've got this in the background. That represents rock and roll. That represents the cult of personality, and that represents absolute beauty. Elvis Presley. By the same token, a couple of years later, he gets usurped by this chap, Ringo. Right? Not particularly talented, a good drummer, you know, he did a really brilliant job in the Beatles without a doubt, you know, and not the best looking bloke in the world. But he ended up married to Barbara Bach. I've gone through all this on my ugly videos. I mean, Ringo was I think Ringo came at number 2 on the big nose video. That there represents the rock and roll dialectic. That there represents everything that we like in terms of rock music. It's an amalgamation of these 2 things. And what I'm going to do in a minute is smile so I can grab this, because that is great, isn't it? That's going to be a great thumbnail, and I don't have to do any work, because I can just grab that and stick a thing. So I'm going to smile and make myself look handsome, I think. Oh, I went into sort of semi-meditational place then. If you look at that, with those 2, you've got Elvis, beautiful rock and roll superstar. Ringo, ugly little drummer. Me in the middle. I am like the amalgamation of all that. On this video, I represent the sublime. I do. Oh, you're getting a bit arrogant, you are. Getting too big for your boots, aren't you, Andy? I think we're done. Are we done? If you like this video, 40 minutes I got out of this. Incredible. It's incredible what I can do when I put my mind to it. 40 minutes, you know, and if you're still at the end, you've sort of enjoyed it. I hope you did. It's nice to look at some beautiful men, isn't it? You know, we appreciated the wonder of nature in male form. It's been all right. That came out a lot better than I did. I apologise if it made you feel a little bit uncomfortable, but it's good to open yourselves up to this side of your personality. And if you're a lady, of course, you'd probably be sat there going, you have made 1,200 videos, and this is the first time you've ever catered for us ladies, us heterosexual ladies. And I'm glad to have done so. So we're all happy, aren't we? So stick a like on it, subscribe, go to Patreon, go into my membership here, go to my PayPal tip jar or my Substack or my Bandcamp. There's loads of ways that you can support me here. Right, so we're done. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.